Jennifer Carty had been abducted on the 12th of August 1981.
The 9-year-old child disappeared as she rode her bicycle to a friend's house.
There's no words that I have that I could tell you what it feels like to have a child missing.
When the case was passed to me, it was already 21 years old, which of course presents a lot of challenges.
We had in excess of 20 tons of collated material, 187,000 people that we'd spoken to.
In a community that had seen so much violence, Jennifer's case still had the capability to shock.
We might see a girl on her own someplace and saying, could I, should I, will I?
If I had have known who had taken my daughter and killed her, I would have killed them.
Andy Carty, take two.
I'm Andy Carty and Jennifer was my daughter. I certainly remember coming home on the 12th of August, and when I drove into the yard, Pat was standing at the back door, and I could tell by looking at her that there was something troubling her. And when I got out of the car and asked her what was wrong, she says, Jennifer hasn't come home.
Earlier that day, Jennifer had taken her bike and cycled to her friend's house.
Went to the house she was supposed to go to, and she never arrived there. And then we went round other houses and farms that we knew that she knew, and possibly she went to one of them and stayed, and we drew a blank.
My name is Raymond Murray. In 2002, I had just been promoted from inspector to the rank of Detective Chief Inspector, and that's when the case first came to my attention. On that day, the 12th of August, 1981, it was a Wednesday, Jennifer had had her lunch. She had a bicycle which had been bought at a local shop a few months before. She was allowed to cycle from her house to a friend's house, which is about 1.5 miles away. She had left at about 1:40 p.m, and we know that because her mother, Pat, had wound her watch just before she left so that Jennifer would know to be home for 4:30, which was the arrangement. And Jennifer set off on her bicycle. Some neighbours believe that they did spot Jennifer on the bicycle a short time later. And then she literally just disappeared.
Jennifer had left from the family home in Ballinderry, County Antrim, where she lived with her parents, Andy and Pat, and 3 siblings.
She was great. She was like me, really happy all the time. Just a typical wee girl. Loved her friends, loved her family, loved family outings. Everything she did, she sparkled. Like children do. She just really was a lovely child. The bike that Jennifer was on was July. I bought that bike, the end of July. And I says to Pat, you know, all the wee girls are coming to this house on their bikes, and Jennifer's outgrowing her wee bike. I says, I'm going to take her down to Hicklin's tonight and buy her a bike. And Pat says to me, oh no, don't be buying it, keep it for a Christmas present. And I says, no, there's a wee bit of summer left and she could use the bike. So that night, Jennifer and I walked hand in hand to Hicklin's bicycle shop, and we looked at the bikes, and she couldn't pick which colour she wanted. And I said, well, I'll go in here with Barry and pay Barry while you pick the colour. And I'll never forget her walking round the corner with that bike. The bike was found that night, very wet night, and it rained very heavy. A friend of mine down the road, he had a very big pickup truck, and he had lights on a bar across the top. He shone the lights over the hedge. Not very far from that last point where she was seen, the reflectors of her bike was picked up by the lights.
That's the moment it pivoted then from being a missing persons investigation into this was an abduction.
That night we didn't get any sleep. What it does to you mentally and what it does to you physically is just beyond any description that I can give you.
It's almost 24 hours now since the girl went missing, and we have fears about her safety, particularly since we found the bicycle in the field.
And of course, at that stage in Northern Ireland, the army had a huge footprint. And even though this had absolutely nothing to do with terrorism, they diverted resources, foot resources, vehicles, even helicopters, to search for Jennifer. This is a document which would have been provided to all senior police commanders, which just says Jennifer Carty, 9 years, result. Search carried out by police and local residents at 0100 hours on the 13th of August 1981. The girl's bicycle was found in a field about 1 mile from her home. Search continues.
My mother lived in Lurgan at the time. She remembered a police car going through her local housing estate with a poster on the back and a loudspeaker asking, "Have you seen Jennifer Carty?"
Robert Giles, take one.
My name is Robert Giles. I am a criminologist, author and researcher. The police search initially concentrated within a 5-mile radius of the Carty household. And it didn't just involve the police, it also involved members of the local community, family, friends, and a lot of volunteers. You almost had like an army of people who had gathered in the area, who the police were coordinating to go over fields, down the roads, to go anywhere.
We searched, we'd asked so many people. All of a sudden, within a couple of hours, there was thousands of people looking for Jennifer. All the neighbours, the farmers and whatnot, every minute that they could get, they were out searching. Plumbers who subcontracted to me shut their business for them days, and other businesses, people just stopped.
This was a little girl who had been abducted, who was missing, and people wanted to come out and help. They wanted to help the Cardys, they wanted to help find Jennifer.
My name's Chris Moore. In 1981, I was a news reporter with BBC Northern Ireland. I was dispatched from the news desk to go out to Ballinderry. And I remember it was a very sunny, warm day. I have sort of a visual memory of large numbers of people turning up to take part in searches. Large numbers of policemen, soldiers were involved in the searches as well. And they were searching the fields and the small streams and rivers around the area. The search for the girl was the important thing. And the hope was that she would be found alive.
Presumably there were a large number of vehicles in the area on Wednesday when Jennifer went missing.
Yes, well, this particular road isn't normally used as a through route.
The police weren't saying very much. I think I made an approach to try and get someone from the family to speak to me.
If someone has taken Jennifer and is watching tonight, what do you have to say to them?
Well, all I can appeal for is that she comes back unharmed.
I can remember making appeals. I can't remember who till. I can remember the cameras here and hoping that somebody had seen her, hoping that if somebody was holding her, that they would let her go, you know, send her home again, hoping that we could. You see, you feel so helpless.
Like, nobody knows what it's like to lose your own daughter, and just give it back to us. And that's all we want, just the daughter back. We don't care about punishments or anything, as long as we get our daughter back.
For the family, I think it was extremely difficult, and especially for two people like Pat, who sadly died recently, and for Andy. I don't really think that they wanted to be cast into the media limelight. That was not in their nature.
What can you do? All you can do is sit and wait. If somebody offers you an olive branch or offers you a straw, you would grab hold of that straw. You would do anything to get your child back.
I'd have to say that we very much appreciate the assistance that we have had from the general public, and in particular the people who are living in and around Achillee and Ballinderry. They have assisted magnificently in the search.
Wendy Austin, take one.
Well, that summer, 1981, was pretty full on. I was a reporter at that stage. You woke up in the morning, you listened to the news, and you thought to yourself, well, which one of those awful stories am I going to be covering today? I remember all those people sitting with that photograph on a printed sheet on their knees. And I think the community around Lisburn, well, it wasn't just the community around Lisburn. People came from really quite far afield to join in and to look for her.
As the days passed and Jennifer Carty hadn't been safely returned, you had more and more worries that it wasn't going to end well.
Every day without news means you've some hope left, but yet every day without news seems to take some hope away.
I had not left this house for the 6 days. My brother-in-law called, he says, Andy, I would like you to come down to the police headquarters just to see the extent of this search and see the effort that the police have put into it, and the army and all the armed forces. So I agreed with him to go down, and we met the senior policeman who I already knew, and we talked, and all of a sudden he was called away.
A member of the public had contacted the police with a potential lead.
On the 18th of August, 1981, 2 men were at a place called McKee's Dam, which was about 18 miles away and was situated off a lay-by on the A1, which was the main road from Belfast out through Lisburn. And they'd gone to assess the area, was it going to be good for shooting ducks? They saw something just beneath the surface of the lake. They saw some bit of clothing. They got concerned that it was Jennifer's body. And they went directly to the local police station at Hillsborough and informed the police.
Jennifer Carty's body was found in a pond beside a lay-by off the main road between Belfast and Dublin.
It's like a kind of black cloud that comes down at a time like that, isn't there? Where you've been hoping against hope, and then that call comes in that a child's body has been found, and you just know that the bottom has dropped out of the Carty family's world, really. I still have a picture in my head, and I think anyone of my kind of age does, of that little girl standing with her brown hair and her wee white shirt and her red trousers and her bike outside her house. And that picture is as clear in my mind now as it was at that time.
Her body was found just behind us here in a small pond. Can you remember if you were travelling
I was.
on this road?
I was here.
A huge investigation by 1981 standards then commenced.
So did you notice any other vehicles parked about the road here?
And I suppose it shocked the community in ways that we thought we were beyond shock, because no matter what we did to each other, no matter how horrendous the streets were and problems with paramilitarism and terrorism, we didn't do that. And even as an 11-year-old living in Lisburn at that stage, I remember the shockwaves in the community, and I remember my own parents. They were less willing to see you move all that far away from the house.
I think it was the end of a period of relative innocence, that something as horrible as that could happen in a country lane in Northern Ireland. I know that sounds ridiculous given what else was going on at that stage, but the troubles were separate from that. This was real kind of country life, if you like.
I had to go to Craigavon morgue. Pat wanted to go with me, but I wouldn't let her go. I said, no, Pat, look, I'll do this. You stay at home with the youngsters. So I went to Craigavon morgue, and I'll never forget that. When you look at your daughter, who'd been in the water for so many days, and I asked him to open the body bag right down to the bottom so I could see all of her.
We thank thee that we can come to thee. We thank thee for the Lord Jesus Christ.
It was a shocking act that for once the entire community could get behind in grief and in sympathy for the family. And in that way, it probably united a community that at that time was bitterly divided. The Carty family are people of a very, very strong faith, and it just sort of shines through everything they do.
Pat had a fantastic and wonderful faith. So she had, and that faith was really her strong point. I didn't have as much faith at that point.
Post-mortem examinations showed Jennifer died by drowning, with evidence also of possible strangulation. And further evidence showed signs of sexual abuse.
The post-mortem would indicate that Jennifer was the victim of some form of sexual assault by her killer.
Like, if I had have known who had taken my daughter and sexually abused her and killed her, I would have killed them. Like, I would have most definitely done that.
The discovery of Jennifer's body revealed new information to detectives.
It was believed that Jennifer's body had been in the water from the 12th of August, so 6 days. The watch was stopped when Jennifer's body was recovered from McKee's Dam at 5:40 p.m. So there was a degree of evidence from the 1981 investigation. So we had the forensic evidence from the watch, we had some eyewitness reports of Jennifer leaving the house and probably being sighted on the bicycle, and that gave us a time frame.
Beyond the time frame, police had very little to go on.
We had no witnesses to the abduction. We had no witnesses to the body deposition. We had no reasonable expectation of delivering forensics. We had no CCTV, and we had no other types of passive data. So it wasn't an easy footing for the investigation right from the start.
They really didn't have any real suspect in mind. The police just didn't have a lot to go on. They just didn't have the vital information. They didn't have the evidence.
Not only was there no evidence, life in Northern Ireland was making the investigation even more difficult.
think in the early 80s, the Troubles just sucked all of the oxygen out of the policing capability. There was something happening every single day. How could you possibly manage the number of cases that they had coming at them all of the time? Jennifer Carty's disappearance and murder, as with many other awful stories, merged into the background, if you like. And sadly, a lot of people forgot about it. No one who was involved did, obviously, but the rest of us moved on.
My name is Roger Orr. I was a detective inspector with Lothian and Borders Police based at Portobello Police Station in Edinburgh.
While in Northern Ireland the search for Jennifer's killer had run cold, around the rest of the UK, a series of similar crimes had left the public in shock.
The first case was that of Susan Maxwell from Coldstream on the borders of Scotland.
She was last seen near the Coldstream Bridge, which spans the River Tweed.
She had been abducted in July of 1982, and her body had been discovered many, many hundreds of miles away in Uttoxeter in Staffordshire. Similarly, in July of 1983, Caroline Hogg, a 5-year-old girl, had been abducted on the promenade beside the beach in Portobello in Edinburgh.
Caroline's parents, John and Annette, appealed for help.
People want that back. They want them back now.
And her body found murdered, dumped in a lay-by near the village of Twycross in Leicestershire.
There are so many inquiries which have been concluded, and there are no new lines of inquiry coming in.
In 1986, 9-year-old Sarah Harper, who lived in the small village of Morley in Leeds, was abducted on a wet night in March.
Her body was found on Saturday on a stretch of the River Trent at Wilford, near Nottingham.
All 3 girls had been sexually assaulted before being murdered, just like Jennifer.
So 3 very similar abductions, when looked at together, provide a linkage and a reason for investigating them as potentially the work of one killer. Unlike today, when there seems to be such a great reliance on forensic evidence derived from a whole range of sources, video from cameras in the street or in private dwellings or in cars, and none of these things applied.
Instead, detectives relied on witness statements, employment records, and door-to-door inquiries.
We had in excess of 20 tons of collated material, 187,000 people that we'd spoken to, 60-odd thousand statements taken, 250,000 vehicles traced and their owners interviewed. And there was not one single piece of forensic evidence which at any time linked any of these crimes.
But suddenly, a breakthrough. A 4th abduction in broad daylight was about to confirm that one man was behind all these horrific crimes.
It was a very warm July day in 1990. His victim comes out of her house only a short distance from here. He's driving past, he sees her, looks ahead and sees this entranceway here and thinks to himself, I can block her on the pavement.
There was a man cutting his lawn on the opposite side of the road. Saw the van parked ahead of her. Saw the girl go behind the van and not re-emerge. He rang the police. The police responded, and they were actually talking to the man when the neighbour saw the van coming back the opposite way through the village and said, listen, that's the van, that's it.
The police officer steps into the middle of the road here and signals the van to stop, and it does stop.
In the back of the van was a girl, stuffed in a sleeping bag with a cushion cover over her head that had a drawstring drawn tight. She was actually very close to dying.
Just like Susie, Caroline, and Sarah, this girl had been sexually assaulted.
The alarm bells were ringing from minute one, basically. I mean, these things don't happen every other day by any stretch of the imagination. The manner in which the girl had been forcibly abducted in broad daylight, literally snatched, bundled and bound in the back of a van, very seriously tied up, her mouth taped, her hands tied behind her back, cushion covers over her head and placed inside a sleeping bag. This was somebody who had clearly done this before.
Robert Black had been unknown. He'd had some juvenile offending way back as young years, but for a long period of time he was completely unknown.
He was a Scot, he was based in London, travelled and worked delivering posters for the advertising industry throughout the UK. And he literally used his work vehicle as his home, with mattresses, bedding. So he lived his life on the road, he had complete freedom, he was accountable to no one, and we were beginning to find out had a lifelong fascination for prepubescent female children.
He drifted about the countryside doing his rounds, and all the time he was doing that, it appeared as if he was fighting an urge to stop and have sexual contact with a child. The van, if you like, was his weapon.
He was described to me by one psychologist as a heat-seeking missile. He was ranging the whole time. His radar was out in front. He was ranging. But as soon as he was locked onto a target, that was it. When he's awake, whether he's working or he's not working, he is constantly fixated on young female children.
Within weeks, Robert Black was convicted of the Stow abduction.
Robert Black was jailed for life at the High Court in Edinburgh for abduction and sexual assault. Sentencing him, Lord Ross said he'd carried out this crime with chilling, cold calculation and cunning.
Detective Orr was convinced Robert Black had committed further crimes and began working on a nationwide investigation.
It was the old hard yards detective work. Basically, we had to look at his journeys, we had to look at where he was, when he was at certain places, what times he was at certain places, how could we place him there. We could use his petrol card, we could use his delivery information, and his wages. So by linking these three elements together over time, we were able to suggest that, yes, Robert Black was in Coldstream, Robert Black was in Edinburgh, was in Portobello, was in Leicester, was in Morley.
Less than 4 years after his first conviction, Robert Black faced trial again. This time for the murders of Susan Maxwell, Caroline Hogg, and Sarah Harper.
To a great sigh of relief, the foreman of the jury gave a verdict of guilty on the first charge. That was the abduction and murder of Susan Maxwell. And the rest followed. Huge, huge relief.
The judge then sentenced Black to life in prison, recommending that he serve a minimum 35 years for each of the three murders. The judge said, "You are an extremely dangerous man. Take him down."
Black was now in prison for 3 murders. In Northern Ireland, the case of Jennifer Cardy was still unsolved. Then, in 2002, 21 years after her death, the case was reopened and given to Raymond Murray. Shortly afterwards, he began to consider serial killer Robert Black.
When the investigation was handed over in 2002, it actually didn't feature Robert Black particularly. So we began to look into it in more detail.
In the 20 years since Jennifer's murder, advances in forensic science should have allowed Detective Murray to recover crucial evidence. But the legacy of the Troubles was inescapable.
The authorities estimate that last night's huge bomb explosion in South Belfast caused at least £20 million worth of damage.
In 1992, there was a huge IRA explosion.
The bomber's target was the Northern Ireland Forensic Science Laboratory. The van packed with explosives left on the road outside, and the damage enormous.
We believe exhibits belonging to the Jennifer Cardy case were lost at that stage.
Those who blew up the forensics labs did it for one reason, but on the other hand, something like the investigation into Jennifer Cardy's disappearance was collateral damage.
Now, 4 years after the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, peace in Northern Ireland freed up a wealth of police resources for the re-examination of cold cases like Jennifer Cardy. So Raymond Murray requested every single piece of evidence from the Robert Black investigations.
We were dealing with the combined investigative efforts by that time, 8 years of intensive police work by 6 police forces throughout the UK, which had amassed tons, literally tons, of paper evidence, index cards, statements, vehicle records. So we had this vast library of information.
Just to give an idea of scale, it came across in the back of an articulated lorry, and it was moved to Belfast, to a police station in North Belfast, where there was a large room set aside. It was set out in racks, put in plastic storage tubs, labelled, documented, audited, sealed. It conveys just the size of it, and when you know that this is the part of the evidence that we used to prove Jennifer's case, it kind of conveys the vastness of it all.
The team opened box after box. Slowly, they began constructing a timeline of Robert Black's delivery schedule from the paper evidence.
The Lothian and Borders aspect of the team had seized a number of exhibits from the company for which Robert Black worked for, which was a company called Poster Dispatch Storage. And in amongst that were invoices and petrol receipts and petrol coupons that tended to show Robert Black's travelling throughout the UK, and that indicated that at times he would have been in Northern Ireland.
Detectives wanted to establish Robert Black's location on August 12, 1981, the day Jennifer was killed. Key to this was a delivery route known as the Ireland Run.
Didn't matter whether it was Northern Ireland or the Republic of Ireland, they just called it the Ireland Run. At times, it included deliveries to Dublin. Now, that was absolutely critical for the investigation. If the deliveries that we believed Robert Black were on the 12th of August included Dublin, he did not have time to abduct Jennifer Cardy. If the postal deliveries did not include Dublin, well, then he probably did.
The team discovered that in 1981, special insurance was required to bring a UK-registered van across the border into the Republic of Ireland.
We were able to dive into company records, which we still were able to find. If they were going to Dublin, they needed green flag insurance at that stage in 1981. And we were actually able to identify that they did not have green flag insurance, which indicated that the run had been within the confines of Northern Ireland only.
It was progress, but didn't prove Robert Black drove the van. So the team turned to the thousands of petrol receipts gathered as part of the Scottish investigation.
The drivers for PDS each had an individual card. It was their personal card, and when they needed petrol, they could pull into a number of different types of petrol stations, BP, Shell, Mobil, produce the card, and that was how they paid for the petrol, and they had to sign the docket, and they had to put the registration number of the vehicle they were in at that time on the docket.
They searched for Robert Black's signature on a Northern Ireland docket.
But we didn't have it. Unlike some of the other investigations, Harper Hogg, Maxwell, we had no petrol receipt that put Robert Black in Northern Ireland.
But Detective Murray was convinced that somewhere in the 20 tons of paperwork was the evidence they needed.
Drivers for PDS, Postal Dispatch and Storage, were paid in two ways. They got a weekly wage, flat wage, but they also got a bonus. And the bonus depended on the runs that they had done. The Ireland run normally attracted a bonus of £50. And the bonus wage book had been found, and for the week of the 14th of August 1981, Robert Black had been paid £50.
Robert Black was in Northern Ireland, but they still couldn't put him near the abduction.
We spoke to all the drivers, and we rapidly established that Deliveries to Northern Ireland always included Belfast, Dunmurry and Newry, and Newry became really, really important.
If Robert Black had made a delivery in Newry, his route would have passed close to Ballinderry, where Jennifer had been abducted and murdered.
Even after all those years, we found a witness that had previously not been found, who owned poster sites in Newry. Family-run business, didn't throw anything out, and we were able to get his original records from 1981. And from that, we were able to prove that there were specific poster campaigns that were running that he needed posters for, and that he needed a delivery in the middle of August 1981. The only person we believe the evidence showed could have done the run was Robert Black. And that is the story of the Cardi investigation. It was about tightening it and tightening it and tightening it by layering on the evidence to build the circumstantial evidence to such a degree that there was no other reasonable explanation other than Robert Black did it. What we believe happened in relation to Jennifer's murder was that Robert Black leaves London on the 11th of August in the Ireland van, makes his way up through England to the docks at Liverpool, boards a Liverpool boat, which was the Ulster Prince, and travels overnight into Northern Ireland, docking at 7 a.m. He then makes deliveries in Belfast, in Dunmurry, and then he goes down the A1, past McKee's Dam to Newry, where he delivers the posters. And he's finished in Newry at about 11:30 a.m. He does not board the boat until 9:15 p.m. that night. He obviously has to be at the docks a short time before, so he's all the afternoon with time on his hands. His MO in England was that if he had time on his hands, he would leave the main roads and he would go and explore the back roads, potentially looking for a child. So we believe that he's come off the main road and he's ended up exploring the ground in and around the Ballinderry area. He then has spotted Jennifer.
Okay, this interview has been tape recorded. The interview is being conducted in an interview room at Antrim Police Station.
The evidence so far was only circumstantial. Police hoped an interview with Robert Black himself might change that.
The date is Monday, 16th of May, 2005, and the time from the clock on the wall is 14:49 hours.
But Robert Black, imprisoned for 3 murders and 1 abduction, had never admitted to any of his crimes.
Robert, could you give me your full name, please?
Robert Black.
Okay, and your date of birth, please?
21/4/47.
There are a number of issues, Robert, that we would like to talk to you about. Are you happy enough with that?
Carry on and see how it goes.
Okay.
There's a terrible contrast between the gentleness of his voice and the violence of the offence itself.
I've got one question, though.
Yeah.
Why, in this situation, is it always a female officer that talks about these things?
You can almost hear from the quality of his voice how a child might respond to him. He's softly spoken, he's not aggressive, he's not sharp.
When I'm being interviewed by a male and a female, it seems when I'm questioned about these matters, it's always a female officer that does the question.
He was far from normal. He would sit and engage you and stare at you. And then he would drop his eyes. And in those moments, you knew that you were getting as close as you were ever likely to get to him. And they always happened when there was any suggestion of killing, any suggestion of using the word murder.
I'm finished talking about that. I've done this before. I'm not doing it again.
And that's when he had difficulty, and that was him putting up his defences and passing the emphasis or the difficulty back onto you.
It's not easy for me to explain, Robert. Perhaps it would be...
No, I'm quite enjoying watching struggle.
Robert Black's an interesting character. He loves driving. He prides himself on driving, and he prides himself on knowing the most direct routes from A to B. So what we tried to do at the start was actually connect with him. We had a 1981 Collins GM Road Atlas, which people of a certain age will remember, long before sat-navs and Google Maps. You could just see him. He was so completely into it. He was leaning over the table, he had a pen, he was marking routes. It developed a good rapport within the interview room.
The detectives asked Black about his movements on August 12th, the day Jennifer was abducted.
The evidence was very gently then beginning to get loaded into him in terms of the bonus book, in terms of the van.
Do you accept that you did the Ireland run that week?
Yeah.
You do. And what we would suggest is that you set off from London, obviously sometime on Tuesday, the 11th of August. So in effect that you would have been in Ireland from the morning of Wednesday, the 12th of August, until that evening.
Yeah.
Black next described a fantasy he used to have when he was driving.
I'd be driving along to see a young girl.
I came to a sort of Rubicon moment, and we all knew it, and we all held our breath.
I'd go out and talk to her and try to persuade her to get into the van. And take her somewhere quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And take her into the back of the van.
He strangely seemed to be engaged with it. And whether it was a combination of that and the fact that he was being interviewed by a woman detective officer at that time as well, brought together some elements that none of us had really considered before.
And, well, can you describe to me, in your fantasy, what the country situation would be like?
Well, it was just a narrow road. It was going downhill. And way at the bottom of the hill, where the road curved away, there was a house set back from the road a bit. And it was the only house in sight.
Mm-hmm.
As we listened to him go through those details, and as we overlaid that against the details of the case, we began to realise it was more than the generalities of what his sexual desires were. He was actually setting it in the context as much as he felt he could dare of the case. And you could see that probably most starkly we felt in the description of the perfect scenario. He talked about the high hedges, the lonely road sweeping round the bend with the house set back, and we thought, right, well, that's where Jennifer went missing.
He would always say that he had kept control, that he had these fantasies, these daydreams about his feelings towards young girls and what would happen. But what he didn't realize was that when he told Pamela Simpson what this fantasy was, what this daydream was, it was actually what really happened.
He effectively relived the murder of Jennifer Cardy, or at least the abduction of Jennifer Cardy, as what was essentially a fantasy for him. But it really was, to all intents and purposes, an admission, a coded admission, if you like.
So the police, in a way, did get a confession out of Robert Black.
And that was the point we thought, right, we've made a breakthrough.
But was it enough to secure a conviction? Robert Black was charged for the murder and abduction of Jennifer Cardy. The trial began on September 22nd, 2011.
Well, the prosecution have begun their opening statement. Jennifer Carty's parents, Andy and Patricia, were in court along with her sister. For them, it's likely to be a difficult and challenging few weeks ahead.
Where we sat, there was a stairway coming up from the cells below, and each day he walked past me like I could have touched him. And then he went to the end and walked round, and he sat almost in front of me, quite close. So for 6 odd weeks, I had to sit and look at the man who I knew had killed my daughter, the last living person that she had seen.
You look across to the family where they were sitting in the seats, and you realise that for them this has been a journey of 30 years, and this is a jury deciding the facts about what happened to their child. So you realise what's at stake. And then you look across to the other bench and you see ranks of media, and you realise, the wider impact it's going to have outside the family. You know that this is going to be a moment that you're not going to forget in a hurry.
Forensics was always going to be the weakest part of the prosecution's case. The 1992 IRA bombing had destroyed most of the material evidence.
Jennifer's clothing and other evidence from the case was lost forever, and that's a huge blow. The lack of forensic evidence is, for any case, a real hindrance.
Even the forensic evidence that did survive was of little evidential value.
Jennifer's clothing had been tape lifted, and from that, 21 hairs were recovered. They were tested for DNA with no results that were useful to the investigation. 3 hairs were actually selected and sent for a specific type of DNA called mitochondrial DNA, which traces the DNA through the female line, but again, didn't generate any useful results for the investigation.
The only thing the prosecution could prove was that Robert Black had the opportunity to abduct and murder Jennifer, thanks to her watch.
The watch was stopped when Jennifer's body was recovered from McKee's Dam at 5:40 p.m. Similar watches were purchased by the forensic lab. They were immersed in water, and not all of them, but most of them stopped within a very, very short period of time. It was a good indicator that she had probably been put into McKee's Dam in around 5:40 p.m.
The time frame suggested Robert Black had almost 4 spare hours before catching the ferry back to England. The case now turned to his previous crimes.
It reached a stage, obviously, where I knew that I was going to be called as a witness. I had submitted a 40-odd page report as a professional witness, and it was time for me to speak to that report in the witness box.
He's a preferential child molester on one level, but he's an aggressive predatory paedophile on another.
I was giving to the public, some of them for the first time, some very intimate details about these previous offences, some quite harrowing evidence, particularly around the incident in Stow and in Robert Black's own personal background.
As far back as June 1963, he had a conviction for what was described as lewd behaviour towards a 7-year-old girl. In 1967, there was a similar conviction on a 6-year-old girl. And in 1990, he was convicted of the abduction of another 6-year-old in the Scottish borders.
I was very conscious of the fact that what I was saying to the wider public and what I was saying to the jury was also being heard in very minute and very harrowing detail by Jennifer's parents and wider family.
We can only imagine how hard it must have been for Jennifer Carty's parents to sit through this day of horrific evidence. Sitting in close to each other in the public gallery, they heard how Black had been caught red-handed abducting a 6-year-old girl in Scotland some 9 years after Jennifer's death.
The interview is being conducted in an interview room at Antrim Police Station.
What we were hoping to get out of the interviews was to begin to investigate him as a person, his psychology, especially around his sexual activity, the type of person that he wanted to have sexual contact with, and the nature of that sexual contact, which we thought would be very, very important when we related it back to the facts of the other case.
Robert, could you give me your full name, please?
Robert Black.
Okay, and your date of birth, please?
21/4/47.
All of a sudden, they played tapes of Robert Black being interviewed in Antrim Crime Suite.
I might see a girl on her own someplace and saying, could I, should I, will I?
He explained on how and why he liked little girls.
I'm not exactly proud of the way I feel towards young girls. Like, there's a part of me that knows I'm wrong, that knows that it's wrong, that I shouldn't be doing things like that. I shouldn't even be thinking things like that.
And he explained other things that he did to himself when he was with these little girls. And it was such a shock.
But there's the other part that says, you like it, go on.
In my imagination, I could never imagine a man wanting to do what he wanted to do in a little girl. And it was absolutely shocking. And I just sat and wept.
It's hard to imagine what it must have been like for them, sitting in court, listening to Robert Black describe what he did, and what he fantasised about, and how that fitted in with their 9-year-old daughter that he killed. Listening to him was horrific. It gives you shivers up your back. You just felt horror and loathing of that man.
That was probably one of the most horrendous memories of the trial. It was listening to them tapes.
The child killer, Robert Black, who's already serving life in prison for the murders of 3 young girls in the 1980s, has been found guilty of killing a 4th victim. 9-year-old Jennifer Cardy went missing in County Antrim in North.
There was just a moment where you think, right, at last the family have got actually what they deserve to get, which is, you know, knowing what happened, somebody convicted, some degree of surety, and not an end to the story, because they will always live it forever, but this bit of it, the criminal justice bit of it, at least has come to some sort of defined end after all that time.
At the beginning, when she went missing and then she was found and we buried her, and there was nobody ever caught for her murder, I had revenge in my mind.
For the last 6 weeks, we have had to endure and listen to how Robert Black kidnapped and sexually abused and murdered our daughter. We heard things that, in all honesty, was not even in our imagination.
But then I got a turning point in my life when I come to know the Lord Jesus as my Saviour, and I learnt about forgiveness. And I prayed long and hard about it, and it wasn't something that happened overnight. I knew that if they ever found the person who murdered my daughter, that I could find forgiveness.
One of the few, I suppose, positive moments that came out of this whole thing was meeting the Cardy family. Having the experience of talking with them, seeing how they live their lives. It does kind of leave a very positive mark on you about how this family has survived, you know, this absolute horror, but not only survived it, but survived it in a way that allows them to be positive, that allows them to be loving, that allows them to be united.
So, can you tell us about your fond memories? Would you like to answer that, Tom?
Jennifer was the most happiest of all little girls that I've ever known. She had a lovely thoughtfulness beyond her 9 years. And Andrea and I will not only never forget her, but yes, she is ever, ever remembered and always missed.
All right, love. After we'd met the press, I went into the court to speak to the clerk of the court to thank her. She says, Andy, I have to tell you something. And she says, I've never sat through anything like that in my life. She says, the first time I've ever seen the prosecution cry. The first time I've ever saw the defence cry. She says, it's the first time I've seen all the jury cry. It's the first time I've seen the police cry. She says, the first time I've ever saw the press cry. And she says, the first time I've ever cried. Such was the atmosphere in that court. I can tell you the exact spot where the bike was found. I'm a runner, I was a distance runner. And I can remember the first day I ran past that spot. And the awful, awful feeling. It doesn't bother me now. It was only a place that the bike was found. It was only a place where she was abducted. The one thing that always brought us through it as a family to know that Jennifer was in heaven. Now, if I wanted to destroy myself, I could say if I never bought her that bike, she wouldn't have been abducted. So you've decisions to make. I could have destroyed my life thinking about that. My fault that she was on that bike. It was my fault. Then Pat could have destroyed herself by saying it was my fault, letting her go down to Ballinderry on her bike. So you have big decisions to make in your life, so you have. Robert Black took Jennifer's life. But the one thing that Pat and I ensured was that he wasn't going to take our lives.